Go ahead.
Fix this top now.
Good? Alright. We're going to go through the chiller. We got 6 compressors and 2 circuits. 3 of these are put together on a common header, all tandem. They're all sharing the same oil line. They're sharing the same discharge header and the same suction. But there'll be 2 separate circuits. They'll stage on accordingly, 1, 2, 3, and then they will switch because there is an alternator that is built into the unit. So don't expect that 1 starts all the time, then 2, then 3. It might be 2, 3, 1. And it'll do that. And it might not be. This might not be the lead circuit. This might be the lead circuit. So this might start. It might be. So any of these 6 can start at any time. It tries to keep track of hours run and keeps it pretty accurate. And start and stop time. Inside of this control cabinet, there's not a lot in there. There's 3 connections for the power, and there's a module inside of there. That module monitors the temperature of the motor windings. So in the event that we have a single phase outing, it will stop it and lock it out for 5 minutes. It does it 3 consecutive times. It'll go into a continuous lockout. The reason why I'm telling you about that module is because a lot of times people think that the compressor is bad, and they open this up and they find that there's a module in there. That module is in a safety circuit and it will not allow it to run. So don't forget when you're doing safety checks to run through the module. Okay. If you look down below here, there's transducers, and there's also regular low pressure and high pressure switches. Okay, so the transducers will transmit back to the computer what the discharge and suction pressure are. It'll calculate superheat for you. And it'll be able to see that on the controller. The reason for the low, auxiliary low pressure switches is so that in the event that that transducer does not catch the problem, the regular low pressure switch will kick it out, or high pressure switch. Coils are up inside here. They're microchannel coils. They're a little bit different than copper and aluminum coil. The fact that just a little bit of dirt and debris on them will cause them to start creeping up on a high head pressure. Because it's aluminum, it transfers heat a lot quicker, and it also loses it real quick, right? So we do not use any kind of coil cleaner on them except Simple Green. That's it. That's the only thing approved for it. No Cal Clean, none of that. I don't care what it says. That's the only thing in the manual says we use. 4-to-1 ratio on the Simple Green. Okay? If not, if you don't want to use it, mess with that, water. Nothing more than 110 psi. Otherwise, you ruin the coils. No power washers. I'm going to repeat that one more time. No power washers. Okay? The reason why I say that is because it'll clean it, and it'll clean it really good and really fast, but you'll have leaks very quickly afterwards. Okay? Again, last time. No power washers.
3525.
The connections up inside here, make sure that everything's standard plug, it's weather tight. I always tell everybody, if you're having trouble, check your cables. Not necessarily up here, we're going to have trouble, but a lot of places, if these are on the ground, they have mice and rats love my cables. They like to eat them. Okay? So, they also like to burrow inside of the heat there, and they like to eat cables inside there. So there's heat tape on there as well, on that evaporator. Okay? So that heat tape will kick on below 30 degrees. It's self-regulating, so you don't need to mess around with it. It'll automatically do it off of outside air temperature. So nothing to mess with it. But here's what my disclaimer is. You might want to check it when it's cold out, just to make sure that it's actually working. Right? We also can override it on service modes and test its operation in summer as well. Okay? We've got electronic expansion valves down at the bottom here for both circuits. See the red label on them with the plug on there? they'll stroke up about a width of your finger. So you can manually stroke them and test their operation. Sometimes they do get hung up.
What type of stroke?
So there's a motor there. There's 6,380 steps on it. Okay, so it's just a little.
That's a lot of stroke.
It is. So it doesn't move very far. It's incremental. Okay? The reason why I'm telling you that is that on the other side there's a sight glass. You can see it stroking, right? But when you look at it, it's not very much, right? You know, so that's why I'm stressing that.
Oh, it's smaller stroke.
It's a small, yeah. It's only going to stroke about that much, right? So when you see it, like about the thickness of your finger. You're looking in that hole. Don't get fooled, like saying, "Hey, it's driving," and it's not. So if you're running into a low pressure situation and you go into the service mode, you say, "Hey, I'm going to stroke this EXV," and you're like, "Oh yeah, it moved." Maybe it didn't move all the way, right? So you want to check the other one, make sure you sort of see it stroke. The reason why I'm telling you this
Are they
is
segregated by circuit?
they are. So these three are on one circuit. These three are on the
The
other circuit.
EXVs.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's one EXV for each circuit.
Gotcha.
What the video type of camera?
So we're trying to maintain a 10 degree superheat, 10 to 13. Okay, and I'm going to give you that range. But what's more important on a TXV than superheat? Subcooling. Right. So
You guys hear that?
let's say I'm
What's
gonna,
more important on a expansion valve, electronic or thermal expansion valve than superheat?
Subcooling.
Subcooling. Right? Remember
yes.
that.
So one thing I'm going to say about these, and again, I don't know how much you know on the refrigeration side. When you set these up, say if we had to start from scratch, we didn't know weigh-in charge. This is nice because we know weigh-in charge. Let's say it's a remote condenser, right? So we have to have our condenser and we have our evaporator. What you want to always do is charge your subcooling first, then adjust your superheat, right? So normally, when you get everything in line and you get your subcooling correct, you will have your superheat fall in the line because it's an electronic valve, and it will automatically adjust. Now, if you are not having that situation, hence what I was telling you before, is the valve actually moving or is the valve stuck, right? So let's say we had to replace a compressor here, and we had a worst case scenario and it blew out the terminals and we lost the charge, right? We would replace the compressor. We would then go to that circuit, look on the tag, and weigh in the charge. Right? That is the most accurate way to do it. Weigh in the charge, because you know from factory, that was when it was working right, that's what we want to do. Okay? So we weigh in our charge, and then we put our machine back into service.
What is the recommended subcooling?
So the recommended subcooling, again, is 18 degrees.
18 degrees.
Right. And it can be 20, plus or minus 3, right? Right. So I did one yesterday, I was at 15, 16, in that ballpark, right? But it was also 75 degree water.
Gotcha.
Right? So if I probably go back today, it's probably more 18, 20.
Yep.
Right? Now I know I'm going a little far down the rabbit hole here. Okay? But I wanted you to understand, because a lot of guys, the electronic expansion valve, they're not getting, right? They're thinking so.
We got a couple B cards here and a couple C cards here, right?
Yeah.
So, rhetorical question for us, but I just wanted to hear your answer. On the thermal expansion valve, how you will exercise the bladder is by introducing different temperatures to the sensing button. How would you be able to emulate that process on this electronic valve if you could?
Off the controller.
Off of the controller, right?
So I'm going to show you some basic stuff today. So that's why when I have, again, the smaller groups, I'll show you how to manipulate the circuit or manipulate the board and how to get into some of these sub-menus.
Perfect.
Okay? I'm not going to go through everything, but I'm going to go through the ones that I can definitely tell you that you want to look at.
Awesome.
Okay? Okay? Questions on this so far?
I do have one. As far as on the compressor itself, you said that we have the safety. When you test that, are we testing continuity resistance? And if we are, do we keep that safety in series or do we take it out of series?
So let's say you had a bad module, and if you're going to test the module inside there, that is measuring the resistance of it's a thermistor. Inside the thermistor, there's thermistors impacted into the motor windings. So you would measure the temperature of the compressor as opposed to the resistance of that, and there's a chart in the manual for that. Okay. If there's not a chart in the manual, you go on Mixer's website, and they give you that module. They give you the module and say, hey, it's this compressor module, and it will say it'll give you the readout of what temperature and resistance that should be. Right. And so let's say you're in a situation where two of them went down for whatever reason. We had a lightning strike, we had two modules go down. If you have to, you can bypass that module. I'm not telling you to bypass the module.
Right.
But if you home everything out and everything's good, more than likely you're fine. If those modules keep going out, what I'm going to tell you is look at your superheat subcooling, just like you were saying. Because if we're rolling this at a 30-degree superheat, we're not getting cooling back to the compressor.
Yeah, you're on the charge.
Right? So charge, electronic expansion valve, etc. Okay? With those, going back to this electronic expansion
Change the
valve,
state prematurely.
you don't have to change the whole assembly. You don't have to change everything out. So what you do is you'd stroke it to 10%, and then you can actually pull the refrigerant out, and you can pull that head off. So that head will unscrew, and you can replace the head rather than the whole entire body.
Makes sense.
Okay, so it's a lot.
It's easy to do.
Yeah, it's a lot nicer. So but if you get a new valve, and I'm just going to tell you because our guys even screw it up sometimes. When you get a new valve, it's going to come at 0. Right? It won't. You will fight that thing until the cows come home and try and get that head off, because that brass against brass piston is in there. So what you do is you take a umbilical off the top, screw it in a new valve, set your controller at 10, stroke the new valve, and then you can unscrew the head, right? And what is that all? Here's a tech tip of the day, right? Now we know that the valve works before we put it in, right? So you can stroke that valve to 100 and say, hey, it works. And that's what it's supposed to look like. Mine don't look that way. Right? So you know ahead of time you're going down the right rabbit hole, right? Okay.
I'll ask some questions, boys. Ask questions.
So I got a question, guys. Do you think it'll be better if we took everyone and went on the roof and looked down while you're talking, or just?
I don't know if they're going to be able to see.
Yeah, we
So
need
you
to
think
see
it's
this.
better?
We need to see
Okay.
fans.
Now we're gonna come over to the control panel.